Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today, we'll journey to one of the most elegant and mysterious places in the magical world, the French Academy of Magic, known as Beauxbatons. This school is wrapped in the scent of old legends, perfume, and enchanting music. Want to know how it differs from Hogwarts and what secrets lie within its walls? Make yourself comfortable. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Etymology. What's in a name? Harry Potter fans love to uncover hidden meanings in names, and Beauxbatons is no exception. The name likely derives from the French phrase Beauxbatons, which translates to beautiful wands. Many believe this is more than just a reference to magic wands. It reflects the very essence of French magic. In Beauxbatons, everything must be elegant, refined, and stylish, even the spells. Number 2. Music. During meals, a magical symphony. When the Beauxbatons students arrived at Hogwarts in the Goblet of Fire, they captivated the crowd not only with their manners but also with a stunning musical performance. But it wasn't just for show. At this French school of magic, art is part of daily life. Students dine to live music played by nymphs, and the food is served with a grace worthy of a royal court. The atmosphere is a symphony of taste and sound, where even lunch feels like a theatrical experience. Number 3. School grounds. Beauty in every detail. While Hogwarts impresses with its dark, Gothic grandeur, Beauxbatons follows an entirely different philosophy. It is a palace of art. Thanks to the patronage of alchemists, the school grounds have been transformed into an exquisite park with enchanted fountains, manicured gardens, and architecture reminiscent of Versailles. Everything breathes refined luxury, as if magic is woven into every curve of every column. Number 4. Beauxbatons and Western Europe, not just for the French. Despite its location in France, Beauxbatons has never been a school exclusively for the French. Much like Hogwarts, which welcomes students from across the British Isles, Beauxbatons opens its doors to young wizards from all over Western Europe. Among its students are children from Belgium, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Spain, and Portugal. Magic, after all, knows no borders. Number 5. Founded in the 13th century, a refuge for the persecuted. Beauxbatons is one of the oldest magical schools in the world. Its history dates back to the late 13th century, when it became a haven for wizards fleeing persecution from the Inquisition and other threats. Legends tell of Vincent Duc de Trèfle-le-Pic, a Beauxbatons graduate who used an invisibility amulet to escape execution by replacing his beheading with a powerful illusion. The school's past is filled with such dramatic tales. Number 6. Hidden in the Pyrenees, a magical retreat. Unlike Durmstrang, which hides its location entirely, Beauxbatons is nestled openly among the snow-covered peaks of the Pyrenees in southern France near the Spanish border. These lands are known for their natural beauty, picturesque valleys, tranquil lakes, and pristine mountain air. Here, magic seems absorbed into the very earth. Number 7. Magical transportation, arriving in style. Unlike the reserved Hogwarts Express, Beauxbatons prefers grand entrances. In the Goblet of Fire, the students arrived at Hogwarts in a massive flying carriage drawn by giant winged horses. These majestic creatures drink only single malt whiskey, and the carriage itself is a masterpiece of magical engineering. However, this mode of travel has often breached secrecy laws. Muggles have spotted it in the sky, much to the dismay of the Ministry of Magic. Number 8. School uniform mystery. The Beauxbatons uniform flows like water and glows like sky. Light blue silk, charmed to move with the wind, hugs the students in elegance. No crests, no sharp lines, only grace. The enchantments are ancient. They adjust to the weather, cooling in the heat, warming in the snow. Some say they even respond to mood. It's not just clothing, said Professor Anceline, who teaches magical design. It is an extension of one's magical self. The design dates back to 1324, crafted by Eloise Valbray, a student whose robes could calm dragons and silence storms. Her legacy lives in every hem. One enchanted gown is displayed in the Hall of Founders, untouched by time, still catching moonlight. In 1995, when Fleur Delacour entered the Great Hall at Hogwarts during the Triwizard Tournament, her uniform shimmered like morning fog. Even standing still, she looked like she was dancing, Ron Weasley whispered, eyes wide. Beauxbatons doesn't just teach magic, it wears it. Number 9, Forbidden Duels. Dueling is a forbidden word at Beauxbatons. The ban dates back to 1764, when Etienne Bellamy, a gifted 17-year-old with a talent for elemental magic, was killed in a sunrise duel by his rival, Claude Marceau. The spell used was legal, the outcome was not. Etienne's wand snapped mid-incantation, and the ricochet set the orchard ablaze. Madame Violette, headmistress at the time, wept as she cast the decree. No wand shall rise in anger on these grounds again. The orchard still bears scorched trees, their blackened branches untouched by time. Since then, Beauxbatons teaches conflict with words, not curses. Lessons in diplomatic defense replace combat. Students study nonviolent spells, negotiation charms, and even empathy enchantments, but not everyone obeys. Whispered tales speak of hidden duels deep in the Pyrenees. They call it La Brume Blanche, the white mist. No names are written, no lights are used, only silence and shadows. In 2007, professors found scorch marks on a stone ledge and 2 broken wands buried in the snow. The duellers were never identified. Madame Maxime addressed the school that winter with quiet fury. "Magic used to prove pride," she said. "Is magic wasted?" A golden plaque now hangs near the entrance hall, etched with Etienne Bellamy's name and a single line. Strength lies not in the wand, but in the hand that chooses to lower it. Number 10, the ghostly lady of Beauxbatons. She moves without sound, wrapped in silver mist, gliding through the oldest halls of Beauxbatons. Students call her Madame Celeste, the ghost of the moon. Her story is whispered during astronomy lessons and late-night walks between towers. In life, she was Celeste Leroux, a brilliant professor who mapped stars with such precision that even Nicolas Flamel used her charts. One winter night in 1473, during a failed experiment involving lunar magic, a burst of unstable energy filled the observatory. Celeste shielded her students with her own body. She never left the room. Now, on clear nights when the moon is full, she reappears on the staircase of the North Tower. Her presence brings calm. Doors open for her, candles brighten. First years say she hums a lullaby from the old wizarding ballads. One boy, Jérôme Martel, once fell down a hidden stairwell. He woke to find Celeste lifting him gently with shimmering hands. She smiled, he told Madame Maxime later. She smelled like starlight and snow. Older students seek her for more than comfort. It's said she answers questions no teacher dares touch. One 7th-year girl, Léa Dumont, asked how to face grief after her father vanished in the war. That night, she found a folded parchment on her bed, marked only with the constellation Lyra and the words, "You are never lost if you follow the sky." No one ever saw who left it. Some professors insist her ghost is just an echo of trauma, but others believe she chose to stay. Her portrait in the astronomy wing still glows faintly during solstices. "Celeste didn't die protecting students," said Headmistress Maxime once. "She became part of the school when she did." And so she remains, the quiet guardian of the night, forever watching over Beauxbatons with eyes full of stars. Number 11. Alchemy in the curriculum. The stone walls of Beauxbatons hide a secret deeper than any charm or enchantment, the Grand Alchemy Hall. Few outsiders know it exists. Beneath the main tower, the laboratory glows with eternal fire, its ceilings lined with symbols no one has dared erase since the 14th century. This is where students study the discipline most other schools treat as myth. Beauxbatons doesn't see alchemy as a relic, it sees it as a future. Nicolas Flamel, walked these very halls in his youth. His desk remains in the center of the lab, untouched. A silver plaque reads, "Here sat the maker of miracles." Students leave offerings, quills, feathers, moonwater. Every first year is told his story. "He did not find the stone," Professor Lenormand says. "He became worthy of it." The legend lives in glass vials, endless notes, and an unbroken chain of alchemists who believe that magic is not just power, but transformation. In 1998, a sixth year named Margot Delisle completed the transmutation cycle, 7 linked potions brewed over the course of 1 lunar year. She was the first student to do so since 1922. Her 7th potion, Vita Lucida, glowed gold and remained stable for 48 hours, long enough to heal an entire ward of curse victims at St. Morgan's Hospital. The Ministry now uses her formula in battlefield kits. Chemical study at Beauxbatons is not just theory, it's endurance, discipline, and silence. Students meditate before mixing. They study the history of metals, the meaning of fire. To create is to surrender, says Master Alchemist Perrin Vauquelin. Only those who let go of the result will ever touch the real gold. And that, perhaps more than anything, is the essence of the school's greatest lesson. Number 12. Magical Gardens and Secret Ingredients. The gardens of Beauxbatons are not for wandering. They breathe, they listen. At first glance, they seem like a dream. Roses blooming under moonlight, vines curling into musical shapes, petals humming softly in the breeze. But hidden behind the main courtyard lies the Jardin Silencieux, or Silent Garden, where rare, magical herbs grow in enchanted soil guarded by whispering charms and ancient wards. One of the most legendary plants found there is the fleur de lune, the moonflower. It blooms only during a full lunar eclipse and only if sung to in Old Breton. Its silver petals shimmer like frost and are said to be the core ingredient in Elixir de Vie, a healing potion capable of restoring organs damaged beyond magical repair. In 1985, a student named Mireille Lefebvre harvested one with bare hands. She had been studying under Professor Bastien Vauquelin for 3 years. It was like touching time itself, she later wrote in her diary. The flower pulsed like a heart. Access to these gardens is limited. Only 5th years and above, who've mastered advanced herbology, are allowed entry. Their trials are strict. One must pass the trial of the thorn, a maze of sentient briars that tests not just knowledge, but intention. If your mind wavers, the vines will find your fear. Professor Vauquelin warns each new group. Some return with scratches, some don't return until morning. These plants are not grown for beauty, they are grown for need. During the Second Wizarding War, it was petals from Beauxbatons' nightshade orchids that saved dozens injured in dragon raids near Marseille. No ministry knew, Headmistress Maxime later told the Confederation, but our gardens were not neutral, they chose a side. Number 13, Beauxbatons and Magical Politics. Beauxbatons may shimmer with elegance, but beneath its marble halls pulses a fierce political legacy. The Academy has long shaped the magical elite of France. Ministers, ambassadors, and magical judges, many walked these corridors as shy teenagers. One name stands out among them, Corentin Delacour, great-uncle to Fleur. He led the Department of Magical Law Enforcement in Paris for over 30 years. Known for his graceful speech and deadly wand work, he famously said, Beauxbatons teaches not just charm but responsibility. During the Second Wizarding War, the school remained publicly neutral. Officially, Madame Maxime claimed, "Our duty is to our students." But beneath the polished calm, the castle became a haven. Injured fighters arrived by port key at dawn. The East Wing was quietly converted into a healing ward. Madame Blanche, the school's head healer, worked tirelessly with students from her advanced healing and restoration class. One of them, Pierre Girard, wrote in his diary, "We were told to keep quiet, but when I closed a wound with spell-woven silk, I knew which side we had chosen." Fleur Delacour, still a student then, was among those who acted. She accompanied Madame Maxime to the giant colonies on a secret mission, an act that risked Beauxbatons' neutrality. In The Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore notes, Olympe Maxime proved her courage not by fighting, but by walking into the teeth of danger, armed with only her voice. The French ministry turned a blind eye. They knew the school's influence ran deeper than any decree. Even after the war, Beauxbatons continued to shape magical diplomacy. In 2003, Headmistress Maxime hosted a summit with the German and Belgian schools to negotiate cross-border spell regulations. The meeting took place in the Enchanted Rose Garden. A storm broke out mid-discussion, yet when Maxime raised her wand, the rain parted. "Let us not allow weather or politics to blind us," she said. Those words were carved into the marble archway that now stands at the garden's entrance. Number 14. The Legend of the Magic Library. In the heart of Beauxbatons stands a library so old and secretive, some believe it predates the castle itself. Its pale marble columns glow faintly at night, and the doors, black wood with silver vines, do not open unless invited. Unlike the Hogwarts library, where even restricted books can be reached with the right permission slip, the Beauxbatons library is alive. It listens, it remembers, and it does not forgive curiosity without purpose. Students say you don't find the right book there. The book finds you. One story still whispers through the corridors. In 1793, a student named Clémence Duval vanished after sneaking into the library during a storm. She had stolen the key from the headmistress's office, hoping to read the Livre de Verre, the Book of Glass. It was said to contain a spell that could stop time for a single heartbeat. When teachers found her wand lying outside the gates, covered in frost, no one dared speak her name aloud for years. "Magic listens here," warned Professor Leroux in 1871, "and it keeps what it catches." Guarding this world of forgotten power is Madame Heloise, the librarian. She wears gloves made of woven moon silk, and her voice never rises above a whisper. Students claim she can see your thoughts reflected in the ink of your notes. One boy, Pierre Marchand, tried to lie about why he needed a book on soul binding. The book hissed and snapped shut on his fingers. Madame Heloise only nodded and said, "The truth always bites louder than a lie." It's said that one shelf holds a page torn from Merlin's own diary. Another, a letter from Rowena Ravenclaw to an unnamed French enchantress, sealed with wax that still glows. These are not stories from fairy tales. These are Beauxbatons legends, too specific to be fiction. Even Fleur Delacour once said, "The air in that place is heavier than magic. It smells like secrets." Number 15, Dance as a Magical Code. In the cool marble halls of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, the echo of footsteps often blended with the faint strains of distant music. Unlike Hogwarts, which throbbed with chaotic energy and unpredictable charm, Beauxbatons radiated elegance, precision, and grace. Yet beneath the surface of this refined institution was a secret artistry known to few beyond the French wizarding world, a tradition that began not with wands but with the sweep of the foot and the twist of the wrist. The dance code, as it was known among students, was not merely a class, it was a legacy. From the third year onward, every Beauxbatons student was initiated into the mysteries of magical etiquette and elemental dance. These were not frivolous entertainments for idle afternoons. Each dance step was a spell, each turn a gesture of power, and each rhythm a thread in the ancient weave of magical control. The school's founder, Marie-Céleste de Sureau, had believed that magic without grace was like a sword without a hilt, dangerous to all, even the wielder. She had infused the curriculum with rituals that combined aesthetic elegance and mystical discipline. It was said that the 5 primary dances taught at Beauxbatons each corresponded to a magical element: air, fire, water, earth, and spirit. They were known collectively as les cinq voiles, the 5 veils. The dance of air demanded precision and lightness, each movement floating like wind over grass. The dance of fire pulsed with staccato energy and fierce spins, invoking raw power. The dance of water was fluid, circular, hypnotic, while Earth's choreography emphasized grounded strength and deliberate momentum. The rarest and most challenging, the dance of spirit, was reserved for the final term and whispered about more than seen, a haunting blend of all others performed in near silence. The purpose was deeper than tradition. The students of Beauxbatons learned to center their magical cause, to align their emotional state with their casting, and to master the invisible flow of magical energies that moved through the human body. This training, rarely discussed outside the academy, gave Beauxbatons witches and wizards a reputation for poise and finesse in duels, negotiations, and enchantments alike. Magic must move through you, not merely from you, read an inscription in the Academy's grand ballroom, attributed to Marie Celeste herself. At the heart of this tradition stood the most anticipated event of the school year, le bal des 5 pétales, the ball of 5 petals. Held under a moonlit dome enchanted to shimmer with falling rose petals, the ball was not simply a social event, but a demonstration of magical command through movement. Attended by students, professors, visiting dignitaries, and notable alumni, the ball served as a silent exam where each participant's skill in the dance code could elevate their status within the magical world. The most prestigious honor of the evening was the fleur d'état, a recognition given to the pair who best exemplified the fusion of grace and power. In 1997, a 5th year named Lucienne Morel and her partner, Etienne Roux, stunned the assembly with a performance of the dance of fire so intense that the candles in the ballroom flared into dragon-shaped plumes. Witnesses claimed that for a brief moment, Lucienne's feet no longer touched the ground, her red dress spiraling like a flame, and the floor beneath her sizzling faintly as if kissed by heat. "She didn't dance to the fire?" a judge remarked in astonishment. "She became it." But perhaps the most whispered story was that of Adrien Delaunay, a graduate whose final performance became legend. In his 7th year, the castle had been under the threat of a lingering curse, left by an exiled professor who had fled decades earlier. The curse, subtle and slow, had begun unraveling the protective enchantments on Beauxbatons' highest tower. Magical repairs failed to hold. Charms flickered. The staff was discreet, but clearly concerned. The ball of 5 petals loomed ahead, yet a sense of unease hung like mist over the academy. Adrien, known for his quiet demeanor and unnerving precision, had mastered all 5 dances to such a degree that his instructors believed he could have taught them. At the ball that year, his partner, Camille Vauquelin, performed alongside him in a rendition of the Dance of Spirit. The room fell silent. It was not the music that held their attention, it was the way the very air stilled, like the hush before a storm. Adrien moved like a shadow woven from moonlight, and his gestures seemed to pull threads from the very walls. As he extended a palm toward the tower's direction in his final flourish, a shimmering veil descended through the ballroom ceiling, touching his fingers before vanishing in a burst of silver. No one understood immediately what had happened, but the next morning the curse was gone. Protective enchantments glowed with renewed vigor. Instructors exchanged stunned glances. Camille later told a classmate that Adrien had whispered, "Every wound needs a rhythm to heal." No one had ever danced a cure before. Beauxbatons has never confirmed the event officially, yet within the Academy's walls, Adrien's name remains sacred. His portrait now hangs in the ballroom, surrounded not by golden frames or plaques, but by a single enchanted petal endlessly falling from the painted sky to the painted floor, never quite touching either. It was a subtle homage, a nod to the school's deepest belief that magic was not only strength, but expression. Even today, third-year students gasp with nervous excitement as they walk through the tall sapphire doors, of the Salon de Miroir, the room where their first lessons in the dance code begin. The floor is made of obsidian polished so fine that their own reflections seem to dance beneath them, always a half-beat ahead. The instructors wear cloaks that shimmer between silk and shadow, and they speak rarely. Their movements teach more than their words. Number 16. Secret underground tunnels. Deep beneath the alabaster towers and swan-adorned halls of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic lies a mystery few have dared to investigate, and fewer still have returned from unchanged. While the students above glide through their studies in a realm of beauty and grace, far below the marble floors stretches a realm of shadows, riddles, and old enchantments. The hidden dungeons of Beauxbatons. Though the school itself is known for its refinement and elegance, this other side of its legacy, buried, silent, and ancient, tells a different story. One steeped in Roman magic, forgotten rituals, and living memories bound to stone and flame. It is said among certain 6th and 7th year students that the grand ballroom, with its tall windows and flickering candelabras, sits directly atop a sealed Roman archway, half crumbled and deliberately hidden behind a reinforced wall. The original magic of Beauxbatons did not begin with Madame Olympe Maxime, nor even with her mysterious predecessor, Lucienne du Lac. The oldest magical structure on the grounds predates them all. A Roman magical outpost established when enchanted legions crossed Gaul, bringing not just war but wand lore and spells from the old temples of Jupiter. The entrance to those catacombs lies beneath what is now the West Wing, guarded not by spells but by riddles carved into the very stone. A former Beauxbatons student, Coralie Fontaine, wrote about her experience in a barely circulated underground magazine published by graduates who now study obscure magic across the continent. She recounted a night in her 7th year when a series of silver moths, conjured by accident during a divination trance, led her into the grand conservatory. There, behind a curtain of blue ivy, she discovered a narrow staircase, hidden from view by a glamour. Each step down felt colder than the last, she said, and her wand dimmed the further she went, as if the very walls drank light and courage alike. Her account describes a chamber lined with columns that bore inscriptions in Latin and Gaulish, alternating in a rhythmic chant, Memoria mane, sed sapientia vulnerat. Memory remains, but wisdom wounds. It was in this chamber, Coralie claimed, that she saw the infamous mirror of Angélique, an artifact believed by many to be a legend. Angélique Delacour, the founder of Beauxbatons, was said to have poured part of her soul into a mirror, not a Horcrux, but a vessel of recollection. When gazed upon under moonlight, it would replay a single memory over and over, in which Angélique taught her first class under threat of war from a dark Roman wizard who challenged her vision of a school for unity. The Ministry of Magic in France has never confirmed the mirror's existence, but a curious entry in a confiscated 3rd edition Grimoire de Paris notes that the silver-faced relic of Beauxbatons shows not one's desires, but one's debt to history. This description matches Coralie's account, wherein she described watching Angélique defend her school not with wand or flame, but with a spell of stillness so profound that time halted for 3 minutes, enough to disarm her enemy and enchant his memory. Another tale, told in hushed tones among the older professors, though never acknowledged officially, surrounds the clock of Laiton. A mysterious magical object that reportedly ticks backward, it is said to be capable of slowing time within a 5-meter radius for exactly 73 seconds. Unlike time-turners, the clock cannot reverse time, nor can it be manipulated. It works once per person per lifetime, and only in moments of pure terror or clarity. A former dueling instructor, Madame Mireille Vaillant, once confessed over spiced wine at a faculty gathering that during her student years she used the clock after being trapped in a collapsing corridor during a forbidden midnight exploration. She and her classmate barely escaped, their robes singed and their minds forever changed. Descriptions of the clock are rare and oddly specific. A parchment fragment housed in the restricted section of the Bibliothèque Magique de Marseille claims it is made of aquamarine glass and bone-hued ivory, with runes circling its base that read, "Pour chaque instant volé, un souvenir est perdu." For every stolen moment, a memory is lost. This would explain why those who have used it report gaps in their recollection afterward, a magical price for meddling with time, one not easily paid. The most unsettling of all relics hidden in Beauxbatons' underbelly may be the living tapestries, or tapisseries veilleuses, embroidered by the school's original enchantresses. Each tapestry shows scenes from the Academy's past, feasts, coronations, victories. But when midnight comes and only a sliver of moonlight spills into the floor above, the figures on the fabric begin to move. Not like portraits, these images don't simply pace or pose. They act out forgotten dramas. According to alumna Odette Marchal, who is now a curator at the Magical Textiles Museum in Dijon, the tapestries once showed the burning of a rival school in the Pyrenees, a school swallowed by flames after its students attempted necromantic rites during the blood moon of 1289. The tapestries are said to whisper too, not in full sentences, but fragments of French, Latin, and an older tongue thought to be pre-Roman. One student, a boy named Etienne Morel, who disappeared mysteriously in 1967, had been researching these whispers for his independent study. His notes were later found strewn in his dormitory, pages filled with diagrams of the tapestry's figures and unsettling lines like "Elle voit, elle revient." She sees, she returns. No body was ever found, and Beauxbatons officially declared him withdrawn from studies. Yet a janitor named Monsieur Pluche swears he once saw a figure matching Etienne's description embroidered into the edge of a tapestry that hadn't moved in centuries. Entrance into these catacombs is not granted by any headmistress or headmaster. It is earned. The enchantments on the dungeon seem to respond only to particular students, those who exhibit not just magical skill, but a very rare combination of emotional clarity and self-sacrifice. Students like Léonard Dupré, who dove into Lake Lys after a classmate fell through the ice and performed resuscitation charms he'd barely mastered, or Aurore Lemoine, who shared her wand with a first year during a chimera attack and stood wandless to shield them until help arrived. Both reportedly vanished for an evening during their 7th year and returned changed, silent, pale, and never speaking of where they had gone. Number 17. Culinary Magic. The dining hall of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic was unlike any other in the wizarding world. Nestled in the snow-kissed valleys of the Pyrenees, the chateau boasted a dining experience that was as much a spectacle of enchantment as it was a necessity. Here, food was not merely nourishment, it was alchemy. Each meal was a performance, and each dish carried within it spells and secrets that stretched back centuries. Unlike the boisterous, bustling kitchens of Hogwarts, Beauxbatons' culinary magic thrived on elegance, precision, and a distinctly French artistry, perfected under the guidance of chefs who were as much wizards as they were gastronomes. Even among those well-versed in magical cuisine, Beauxbatons' approach was unparalleled. At the heart of this culinary tradition was head chef Émile Douvet, a descendant of the famed Augustin Douvet, who had once cooked for the court of magical King Louis XIV. Émile's signature was not only his culinary genius but his spellcraft, woven seamlessly into every croissant, tart, and consommé. It was said that he could infuse emotion into a meal, that joy, comfort, and even bravery could be summoned with a single bite. Dishes were not simply prepared, they were enchanted, each carrying a carefully constructed spell that affected the consumer's mind and body in subtle, delightful ways. One popular saying among Beauxbatons students was, "Duvet's soup knows your soul." Breakfast at Beauxbatons was a quiet ritual, often beginning with a gentle waft of golden aromas drifting into dormitories, softly rousing students from their sleep. On such mornings, the hall would be filled with the warm scent of rising bread, citrus zest, and vanilla cream. Croissants, flaky, buttery, and warm to the touch, would glide from silver trays, steaming softly, their magic still gently crackling within. These were no ordinary pastries. Infused with vigorem dulcis, a charm devised by Duvet himself, the croissants did more than fill bellies, they dispelled fatigue. As student Clémence Moreau once wrote in her journal, one bite and the weariness of the midnight astronomy exam simply vanished like dew in morning sun. These breakfast spells were carefully calibrated. The croissants, for instance, used lavender-infused levitation charms during the proofing process to maintain their feathery texture. In the final baking stage, a low-frequency warming spell activated the revitalizing effects, ensuring each student began their day not only fed, but renewed. Some students described a gentle tingling sensation behind their eyes, or a moment of lucidity as if the fog of sleep was being pulled away by invisible hands. Midday meals were no less magical. The dishes were often themed to reflect the subjects being studied that day. During a month-long unit on elemental magic, the soups changed color with every spoonful: fiery orange for fire, icy blue for water, earthy green for earth, and cloudy gray for air. Each color carried a distinct flavor and was charmed to warm, cool, ground, or lighten the senses. The elemental potage, as it was known, was a signature invention of sous-chef Thérèse Blanchette, a former Beauxbatons alumna who had once stunned the International Culinary Spell Symposium with her edible stormcloud dessert. The dessert that captured the imagination of all, however, was Merlin's Cloud, a creation so extraordinary that it bordered on legend. Officially known as Nuage de Merlin, it was a pale, shimmering pie with a filling of whipped starlight cream, charmed vanilla, and dream root essence. The moment the first forkful passed your lips, a peculiar sensation would begin to rise in your chest. Then slowly you would lift, physically float no more than a few inches from your seat. For a brief minute or two, students would hover, laughing softly, their laughter as light as the dessert itself. The enchantment was gentle, carefully tuned by Duvet with floating charms, adjusted for safety, and monitored by the staff to ensure no one floated into the chandelier. The origin of Merlin's Cloud dated back to a forgotten duel between culinary masters of the 19th century. The story told of a challenge between Duvet's ancestor and a rival from Durmstrang, each trying to create a dessert that could make the eater fly without using a broom. Only Duvet's creation succeeded, earning praise from the then Minister of Magical Gastronomy, who proclaimed, "It is as though I have swallowed a laugh, and it has carried me to the stars." The recipe was passed down secretly, never written, always whispered from one chef to the next, like a sacred incantation. Aromatic enchantments played an equally important role in Beauxbatons' dining experience. The dining hall's scent was enchanted to shift subtly throughout the meal: citrus and ginger at breakfast to awaken the mind, rosemary and thyme at lunch to enhance digestion and focus, and lavender and chamomile in the evenings to promote calmness and sleep. According to Madame Martine Renard, the school's aroma charmer, each scent was a bridge between the body and the food, allowing the spell within to do its most effective work. One particularly famous instance of aroma magic came during the winter of 2002, when a rogue batch of spiced pear tartlets accidentally included a mispronounced sensus floris spell. Instead of creating the intended warmth and comfort, the tartlets caused students to burst into spontaneous sonnets about their first love. While harmless and humorous, the incident led to the strict enforcement of pronunciation standards in culinary charms. As a result, Professor Jean-Pierre Vaillant added a compulsory phonetics module to the magical gastronomy curriculum. There was also a deeper, more philosophical layer to this culinary culture. At Beauxbatons, food was considered an extension of the student's magical self, a daily reminder that magic was not only found in wands and potions, but in the intimate act of nourishing life. A class led by Madame Céleste Laforge explored the connection between magical energy and culinary transmutation. Her students would often fast for a day, then create a single dish that represented a core memory. One student, Etienne Dubois, presented a stew that shimmered with tears. When eaten, it revealed to each person a childhood moment they had long forgotten. "The taste of my mother's lullaby," one teacher reportedly murmured. Number 18. The Pearl Salamander. In the lavender-drenched foothills of the Pyrenees, where mist clings to ancient oaks and wild magic rustles through the alpine meadows, stands a school of enchantment far older than many suspect. Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, known to most of the world through shimmering glimpses at the Triwizard Tournament or through the polished grace of Fleur Delacour, conceals within its ivory walls not just elegance and refinement, but a mystery as blazing and ancient as fire itself. While Hogwarts boasts the lion-hearted Gryffindor crest and Durmstrang wraps itself in the severe dignity of the double-headed eagle, Beauxbatons is marked by a creature that breathes flame, yet wears the colour of moonlight, la salamandre perlière, the pearl salamander. It is not merely a symbol engraved into the wax of official letters or carved into archways of crystal. The pearl salamander, unlike many magical emblems, exists beyond metaphor. It is said to be a living being, descended from a line that began the very day the school's cornerstone was laid by the legendary founder, Melusine Aquitaine. A French enchantress of formidable will and immense knowledge in elemental magic, Melusine had wandered across Europe, seeking a place where the flame of magical knowledge could burn undisturbed. And when she reached the glacial mountain spring known as Lac Argenté, her wand glowed blue, and she knew she had found home. According to Madame Berthilde Delacour, current archivist of Beauxbatons and a relative of the famous Fleur, Melusine lit the hearth of the castle with fire conjured not from spellwork, but from invocation. She stood before the stone hearth in the grand vestibule and whispered a phrase lost to time. In response, from the burning core of the earth, a shimmering white flame burst forth, and within its coils danced a creature unlike any seen before. Pale as opal, with iridescent skin like polished nacre and eyes of sapphire, the first pearl salamander emerged. It made no sound, Madame Delacour once wrote in her journal, but its presence warmed the entire castle in an instant, as though we were breathing sunlight. The pearl salamander, named Blancheflamme by Melusine herself, refused to leave the hearth. Over time, the teachers realized she was not simply a guardian, but a living wellspring of elemental magic. Her breath rekindled dying charms, and her tail shimmered with alchemical properties. Alchemy, in fact, became one of the earliest specialties of Beauxbatons, and Blancheflamme's essence was believed to be the inspiration for the school's early discovery of crystalline, magical focusing rods, precursors to modern wands in France. The fire that fuels knowledge, as one plaque in the Hall of Founders reads, was born not of man, but of salamander. During the Renaissance, as wizardry across Europe fractured into secrecy, and the statute of secrecy loomed on the horizon, Blancheflamme vanished. But, curiously, she left behind a trail of molten glass, 10 perfect spheres that never cooled, now displayed in a silver arc above the flame hall. Each orb was found nestled within the ashes of her hearth after her disappearance. The most devout students and professors believe they were her eggs, and that within the hall her lineage continues to this day. Indeed, the chamber remains strictly off-limits to all but faculty and upper sixth-year students, a rule so rigorously enforced that even during the darkest days of the Grindelwald era, the headmistress at the time, Odette Vauquelin, would station a basilisk fang-wielding guardian statue outside its door. The Hall of Flame is never spoken of lightly. In a letter dated 1923, Professor Émeric Chardon, then master of conjuration, described his first entrance. The door creaked open with a heat that could be felt through woolen robes. The light within was gentle, not scorching, and in the centre lay a nest of embers cradling a small, breathing body. It shimmered like moonlight on fire. The salamander watched me with an intelligence that was terrifying. I knew then I stood not before a beast, but a relic of a power older than magic itself. The salamanders, it seems, have names, whispered ones known only to those who tend to the hall. The current salamander, presumed descendant of Blanche-Flamme, is known as Cœur Argent, Silver Heart. She resides curled around a sapphire basin of eternal fire, and it is said her breath stirs the winds that sweep through the school corridors in winter. More than once, her flames have been seen flickering in the stained glass windows of the eastern tower, dancing in patterns too rhythmic to be coincidence. A first-year girl once claimed the fire spelled her name. She was silenced by her peers, but the professors did not scold her. In Beauxbatons, flame is never mere heat, it is language. One of the most fascinating aspects of the pearl salamanders is their diet, or rather the lack of it in the traditional sense. They do not consume food, instead they feed on pure magical essence, a term loosely defined in modern magical theory, but revered with near-religious solemnity at Beauxbatons. The exact process by which magic is offered to the salamander remains cloaked in mystery. It is known that the annual Nuit des Étoiles, a ceremony held each winter solstice, involves the gathering of all eligible students in the Hall of Whispers, where they contribute silent magical offerings. What is offered and how is unknown, but it is widely believed that the salamander glows brighter for days afterward. There is a peculiar tradition among seventh-year students, especially those chosen as Valérians, the equivalent of head boys and girls. Before graduation, they are invited to step alone into the Hall of Flame and stand before Cœur Argent. It is not a test nor a rite of passage anyone is graded on, but those who emerge speak of visions, of warmth that feels like memory, and of whispers in forgotten tongues. It was like standing in my mother's embrace and the roar of the universe at once, confessed Geraldine Noël, Valérienne of 1998, now an unspeakable at the French ministry. I forgot who I was and remembered who I was always meant to be. The symbolism of the salamander is deeply embedded in every aspect of Beauxbatons life. Their robes shimmer faintly with a pearlescent sheen, and their wands are often tipped with crystal cores resembling salamander skin. The school's motto, Ardente lux intus, or the light within burns brightly, is embroidered in silver thread over each student's heart. No other school places as much emphasis on inner refinement as external ability, a lesson derived directly from their mythical fire dweller. As Madame Maxime once told a delegation from Hogwarts, we teach our students to shine not for spectacle, but from within. Even the school's architecture pays homage to the salamander. The great dining hall ceiling does not mimic the sky, as at Hogwarts, but glows with gentle flames, rippling in hues of pearl and gold, echoing the breath of Cœur Argent herself. Candles are rarely used. Instead, orbs of floating fire hover above each table, responsive to the emotions of those seated beneath them. They dim in sorrow, brighten in joy, and occasionally spiral in a curious dance when students are mischievous, a quirk many suspect is the doing of young salamanders testing their empathy. Though not referenced directly in the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling left a curious hint in The Goblet of Fire during the scene in which the Beauxbatons students arrive. They were approaching the castle on a glittering carriage the size of a house, pulled by a dozen winged horses, all of them palominos, and the students disembarking wore robes of silvery blue that caught the light in a way that reminded Harry of moonlit water. Moonlit water, the colour of the pearl salamander. A subtle nod, perhaps, to a deeper mythology Rowling left untold. In times of crisis, the salamander has been invoked for protection. During the Second Wizarding War, when the threat of Death Eaters loomed over magical Europe, Beauxbatons sealed its grounds with a ring of flame said to have been summoned by Coeur Argent herself. Headmistress Maxime never confirmed this, but the outer hedges bore scorch marks in perfect concentric circles for over a decade. None dared cross that boundary. Legends also persist of a rebellious sixth-year, Leonard Fleury, who once attempted to smuggle a salamander egg out of the hall. His expulsion was swift, but the egg vanished. Years later, a tiny explosion of white flame destroyed the west wing of his family estate in Lyon. He survived, though his hair remained white for the rest of his life. When asked what he had seen, he would only reply, "You cannot chain fire that chooses where to burn." Modern magical theorists have begun to take greater interest in the salamander. Noted magi-zoologist Mathilde Rosier published a controversial paper in Ars Magica suggesting that the pearl salamander might be a surviving branch of the Salamandra caelestis, an ancient creature believed extinct since the fall of Babylon. Her hypothesis was based on similarities in behavioral traits and rare magical emissions detected by enchanted spectroscopes. Though her findings are disputed, Rosier's theories have revived scholarly interest in Beauxbatons as a site not only of education but of magical archaeology. Of course, many details remain unconfirmed. The school's refusal to allow foreign researchers access to the Hall of Flame has been a point of contention for decades. "Mystery is part of magic," said Madame Maxime in a 2007 interview. "To expose every spark to analysis is to extinguish the fire." Whether out of respect, reverence, or fear, the academic world has largely complied. But to walk the halls of Beauxbatons is to feel that presence, the low hum of energy in the walls, the warm pulse beneath marble floors, the flicker of white light at the edge of vision. The pearl salamander may not speak, may not roar or fly or wield power like a dragon, but she endures. In her silence, she teaches. In her flame, she remembers. And in her glow, students find not only light, but purpose. Because Beauxbatons is not simply a school, it is a hearth, and in the heart of every flame there lies a salamander, watching, waiting, and warming the next generation of magic. Number 19, scent-based grading system. In the gentle hills of southern France, tucked between mist-covered vineyards and enchanted woodlands, lies the grand palace of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic. Often compared to Hogwarts in prestige and Durmstrang in tradition, Beauxbatons, also called Charmbaton in certain Slavic wizarding tongues, boasts an atmosphere of serenity, poise, and refinement. But beneath the marble columns and sky-blue silk uniforms lies a secret most witches and wizards beyond its walls have never encountered: the Academy's profoundly unique method of evaluating magical knowledge. Unlike the rigid grading systems used in Britain or the stern numeric codes of Eastern European institutions, Charmbaton employs no letters, no numbers, no howlers, and certainly no academic owls. Instead, each examination culminates in the conjuration of a scented mist, an aromatic verdict that hovers like a ghostly crown above the student's head. This ephemeral cloud, crafted by the examiners through a refined and deeply symbolic charm known as l'essence du savoir, distills not just correct answers, but the spirit, attitude, and honesty of the student's magical journey. When Fleur Delacour spoke about Beauxbatons in the Triwizard Tournament, she never mentioned this detail. It was perhaps too intimate, too sacred a custom to share amidst the chaos of dragons and dark tasks. But ask any graduate of Beauxbatons, and they will remember the day they first smelled lavender blooming above their parchment, or worse, the foul sting of sulphur announcing their shame to the entire hall. These scents didn't merely indicate pass or fail, they told a story. One winter, a quiet fifth year named Émile Chastain sat his charms exam in the sun-drenched salle d'or. The question was deceptively simple. to levitate a glass sphere through a moving labyrinth of obstacles. While others rushed for precision, Emile closed his eyes and whispered his incantation with gentleness and rhythm, guiding the sphere not just with wand movements, but with his breath. When the task was complete, Professor Laroche raised her wand and a soft mist drifted upwards. The scent was unmistakable, warm vanilla with a touch of cedar. A hush fell across the room. Cedar was rare. It meant insight, intuition, and depth. And vanilla, always associated with emotional intelligence, showed the boy had not only understood the spell, but had bonded with its essence. In Beauxbatons, aromas function as language. Each smell carries layered meaning, curated over centuries, and codified in the Academy's secret book, Parfum de Vérité. Professor Bellamy, the long-retired alchemy instructor, once described the system as an echo of the student's soul, caught in scent. A waft of fresh mint indicated clarity of thought. Rosemary meant diligence. Orange blossom implied originality, but hinted at inconsistency. And clove, bittersweet and sharp, suggested a student who was technically proficient, but emotionally disengaged. Perhaps the most feared scent of all was sulphur. Not the hint of brimstone from certain potions, but pure, pungent sulphur, like a snapped match or rotting egg. Only one cloud of sulphur could ruin a year's worth of respect. In the spring of 1991, a young witch named Solène Beaulieu was caught attempting to enchant her examination paper to write itself. The spell failed, but the intent had been registered. When Professor Nereid lifted her wand, the sulphur stench that followed was so strong it made the front rows gag. Solène never returned the following year. Some say she transferred to a smaller school in Geneva, but her name is still whispered whenever someone glances nervously at the mist above their head. This system, though elegant, can be cruel in its transparency. There is no privacy in scent. If a student receives the fragrance of crushed rose petals, meaning romantic distraction, it is known to all. If someone's mist reveals the oily trace of iron and rain, it means fear dominated their mind during the exam. Emotions are laid bare, not through sobbing or confession, but through perfume. Beauxbatons' founders believed magic should reflect the self. To enchant without knowing oneself is to blindfold the spell, wrote Geneviève de Margot, the first headmistress, in her memoir, Les Larmes Bleues. Every classroom is equipped with crystal hoods that funnel the mist above a student's station. The aromas linger for just under 5 minutes before dissipating into the scented breeze that constantly flows through the corridors. There are no permanent records of the scents. A student's reputation relies on memory and collective witness. This ephemerality is intentional. The mist is meant to spark introspection, not become a prison. It is said that once a particularly unkind professor tried to bottle the scents for blackmail purposes. He was dismissed within the week, and his wand snapped by the board of virtue. During the annual exams of completion for 7th years, the scent magic is taken to its highest level. Instead of hovering mist, students are invited to a formal ritual called La Brume Finale. In a chamber lit only by floating blue candles, each student performs a final spell of their choosing, demonstrating the culmination of their studies. When the wand lowers, the professor invokes a full-bodied cloud of scent that envelops the student. These clouds are visible for an entire hour, marking the student's legacy. One year, an extraordinary scent emerged around a girl named Amélie Vaillant. A complex bouquet of night-blooming jasmine, ancient parchment, and sea salt. It represented mystery, academic brilliance, and emotional honesty. She was immediately offered a position at the Department of Magical Ethics in Paris. Not every student fares so well. The scent of burned sugar, a signal of excessive ambition and unstable creativity, was once seen swirling around 3 candidates in the same year. All 3 had aimed for the same honor, the silver wand of ingenuity. None of them won. Instead, the title was granted to a humble boy named Lucien Paré, whose soft sandalwood and wool aroma spoke of consistency and silent mastery. The use of scent also reshapes student behavior. Without the threat of cold numbers or failing grades, students are more likely to experiment, reflect, and grow. Failure is no longer a red mark, but a fragrance to be interpreted. A whiff of rain-soaked earth might indicate a good effort hindered by anxiety. Cinnamon shows eagerness and slight overreach. Licorice? A warning of cunning used without care. Students learn to understand themselves as much as their subjects. The magical origins of the scent system trace back to the 17th century, when a perfumer witch named Clarisse Duvant collaborated with the Academy to craft what she called a language for the unseen. Her spells blended botanical alchemy with soul-reading enchantments, allowing scent to become a narrative form. Though her grimoires have long been protected under family secrecy, excerpts survive in the school's vault. One reads, "Lavender for balance, yes, but mixed with fog it speaks of understanding one through sorrow." Even teachers receive training to interpret the subtleties of the mists. It is not enough to recognize a scent, one must read it like a poem. In the herbology wing, Professor Rousseau once mistook the smell of honeycomb as a sign of laziness. A second opinion revealed it was actually the rare symbol for protective leadership. The student went on to become the youngest head healer in Bordeaux. Since then, a council of 3 professors is required to interpret any final cloud. The system has its critics, especially among bureaucrats who dislike subjective measures. An attempt to reform the scent system in 2003 was swiftly overturned when alumni, including several high-ranking ministry officials, defended its value. "It taught us to see beyond correctness," said Aurélien Fabre, then chief envoy to the Mediterranean Confederation. "It taught us to feel our magic." Some wizards from Hogwarts who visited during a cultural exchange were bewildered by the process. One Gryffindor named Marietta Bell complained that the smell of cinnamon and pine needles made her paranoid for a week, but others found it liberating. "At Hogwarts I always felt I had to compete," admitted a Hufflepuff boy named Owen Dandridge. "But in Beauxbatons, when my cloud smelled of almond and ink, I knew my thoughts mattered more than my scores." Despite its poetic nature, the scent system does not replace discipline. Students who consistently earn unflattering aromas are quietly offered counseling. The Academy's philosophy holds that no scent is final. Even sulfur, that dreadful warning, can give way to lemon balm, a rare scent that means redemption, earned through hard work and humility. There are stories of students who endured the worst aromas for years, only to leave the school surrounded by clouds of sage and sunlight. The sensory memory of scent is said to linger in dreams. Alumni often describe dreaming of their exams not with fear, but nostalgia, remembering the moment their deepest selves were made visible in an invisible world. Beauxbatons doesn't merely teach magic, it teaches students to interpret their own essence. And perhaps that is why, though the Academy remains mysterious to outsiders, it consistently produces some of the most emotionally intelligent, ethical, and original minds in the magical world. Because in a castle where truth hangs in the air like perfume, pretense fades, and what remains is real. Number 20, Enchanted, Letter Writing. In the sunlit halls of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, where marble pillars shimmer with a faint, golden sheen, and the air always carries a trace of blooming jasmine, there exists a subject found nowhere else in the wizarding world. Hidden behind tall, stained glass doors in the south wing of the palace lies the classroom of lettres enchantées, the art of enchanted letter writing. Unlike the more utilitarian subjects of transfiguration or potions, this course begins not with wands but with quills. And not just any quills, but instruments carved from the feathers of songbirds who've willingly offered them during the spring equinox. These are the tools of a different kind of spellwork, one that doesn't break curses or summon light, but instead communicates the soul of the writer in words that shimmer, sing, and weep. Every Beauxbatons student begins Lettres Enchantes from their first year. There are no exceptions, no shortcuts, and certainly no dismissals. Madame Vautrin, the ageless instructor with hair like braided starlight, is said to have written the first magical love letter to be accepted by the Parisian archives of magical history. Ink is the blood of feeling, she tells her class every September, and paper the skin of memory. Her voice echoes even now in the diaries of generations of students who trembled with awe as they cast their first verbe accord charm, watching their letters breathe faint. Glimmers of lavender mist. In no other school is such reverence paid to the written word. At Durmstrang, ink is cold calculation, at Hogwarts a tool for essays. But at Beauxbatons, a letter is a window into the writer's deepest truth. Each letter penned in this course is a spell, not of destruction or defense, but of revelation. Students learn not only how to communicate, but how to translate feeling into color, scent, rhythm, and image. The ink might twist into flowers that bloom as the reader turns the page, or the parchment might hum with a lullaby from the sender's childhood village in Provence. Letters don't merely inform, they perform. In the spring term of 1993, a fourth-year student named Camille Lefebvre wrote what has since become known as the Lettre de Rosée. It was addressed to her grandmother, who had recently slipped into a magical sleep from which the healers at Saint Céleste could not wake her. Madame Vautrin, upon reading the first draft, wept openly before the class. Camille had infused her words with the scent of the apple tart her grandmother used to bake, and enchanted the parchment so that its surface shimmered like early morning dew on wild grass. When the letter was placed on her grandmother's chest, she stirred, and though she did not wake, she smiled. The Lettre de Rosée was copied, with Camille's permission, and is now a teaching example kept under glass in the Beauxbatons library. This type of magic is delicate. It cannot be forced or faked. One cannot simply enchant a scroll to smell like roses. The feeling must be true, the intention sincere. The student must be present in every stroke of the quill. In their second year, students are taught how to blend their emotional signature into ink using a charm known as filtre d'âme, which binds their memory to a specific phrase or line. It is more difficult than conjuring a Patronus, Madame Vautrin famously said, because it demands not just joy, but vulnerability. During the Triwizard Tournament of 1994, the visitors from Hogwarts noticed the quiet practice of the Beauxbatons students, who in the evenings gathered by candlelight to write letters not to send, but to feel. Fleur Delacour, though known for her strength and beauty, was among the top pupils in Lettres Enchantes. A surviving letter of hers, preserved in a museum in Marseille, opens with a line that glows blue in moonlight and closes with a whisper of an old lullaby. Fleur's letters were said to tremble in the hands of the reader, a trick only achievable by layering a tremolo magique over living parchment infused with tears. While other magical institutions favour the grandeur of battle magic, Beauxbatons prizes grace, emotion, and inner precision. Lettres Enchantes is as much a test of character as it is of talent. Students who lie in their writing find their letters disintegrating mid-sentence. One third-year boy, Armand Petit, attempted to exaggerate his bravery in a letter to his sweetheart, only to find the parchment burst into a cloud of sneezing powder. Truth is not optional, it is the binding agent of every spell. One of the most celebrated alumni of this class is Hélène Marchand, now a literary enchantress whose works are sold not in books but in folded parchment sealed with emotion-triggered charms. Her most famous piece, Les Mots Bleus, is a 6-page letter that causes the reader to cry gently, then laugh, then feel the comfort of a warm fire, even when read in solitude. Hélène once explained in an interview with La Gazette Enchantée, "We do not write to inform, we write to transform. Every word is a wand, every sentence a ceremony." even students with little writing skill are encouraged to find their unique voice. In the third year, a module called Silences et Soupirs teaches pupils how to embed feeling into pauses. The space between lines, the time it takes ink to dry, the way a signature curls. Every element of a letter is a brushstroke of magic. It is not about perfect grammar, but perfect resonance. The goal is not to impress, but to imprint. Some students specialize further. Margot Rousseau, class of 1996, developed a variant of the letter that emitted gentle chimes when read, each corresponding to a particular memory shared between her and the recipient. Her graduation thesis was a correspondence project between separated families during the Second Goblin Rebellion. Her letters helped maintain morale on both sides and were recognized by the Ministry of Magic for their role in keeping peace. To protect such powerful emotions, students are also taught how to shield their letters using the bouclier de cœur charm. A protected letter will only reveal its magic to the intended reader. Many believe this is what made Camille Lefebvre's letter to her grandmother so potent. It was, in essence, a key to a memory palace only they shared. Sometimes letters are too powerful. In 2001, a student named Etienne Mercier wrote a love letter to a fellow student, unknowingly casting a nostalgie profonde hex that caused the recipient to relive their happiest memory every time they reread it. The letter had to be locked away for a full year before its magic faded. Etienne later became a scholar on emotional magical ethics and lectured at the Academy on the risks of overcharged prose. There's a reason why the Beauxbatons motto, par les mots, la magie du cœur, adorns the entryway to the classroom. Through words, the magic of the heart. The practice of lettres enchantées goes beyond mere enchantment. It is a mirror to the soul. Each letter written in this course, even the clumsy ones of first years, holds weight. They are stored, not discarded. Many alumni return decades later to read their early works and rediscover emotions they thought they had long buried. The parchment used in class is grown, not made. Grown in a hidden greenhouse beneath the school's west garden, the papyrus d'élan sprouts from enchanted vines that bloom only when spoken to kindly. This paper, pale gold and slightly warm to the touch, responds better to emotions than to spells. It has been known to curl protectively around secrets or to unfold when coaxed by honest regret. Wands are rarely used in this class. Instead, students learn to channel emotion through their hands, their breath, their silence. A letter begins before the ink, in the thought, in the decision to write. It is a meditative act, a ritual. As such, Lettres Enchantées is often the quietest room in Beauxbatons, despite the vibrant music and glowing paragraphs that fill the air. This course has even shaped the politics of the magical world. In 1982, a letter penned by a Beauxbatons graduate helped broker peace between two feuding magical families in the Alps. The letter, scented with elderflower and written in alternating gold and midnight ink, reportedly caused both patriarchs to weep. Neither spoke of what they read, but they embraced the next morning under a snowy fir tree. A copy of the letter, its enchantments long faded, hangs now in the school's Hall of Diplomacy. It is not unusual for students to fall in love through their letters. Secret correspondences blossom, not always romantic, but always intimate. The art of letter writing reveals sides of the self hidden even from the writer. Emotions they could never say aloud find voice in ink. One alumna, Chloé Navarre, once wrote, "In Lettres Enchantées, I learned more about myself than in all other classes combined. Every letter was a confession I didn't know I needed." Beauxbatons believes that to master magic one must first master the self, and no magic tests this more than Lettres Enchantées. The course is not graded by clarity or grammar, but by resonance. If the letter breathes, glows, weeps, it is considered complete. If it lingers in the heart of the reader like a haunting melody, It has passed. Even now, decades after graduating, former students find themselves returning to the quill in moments of sorrow or joy. There is something deeply human, therefore deeply magical, in the act of turning raw emotion into something tangible, shareable, eternal. Not all letters are sent. Some are folded, sealed, and kept in drawers, their magic not for others, but for the soul that created them. For in Beauxbatons, and especially in the quiet beauty of Lettres Enchanted, magic is not about power, it is about presence. A letter, when written with heart, can cross not only distance, but time, silence, even death. It is not just a message, it is a memory given wings. Number 21, Magical Shadow Theatre. Every spring when the cherry blossoms begin to bloom around the marble towers of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, the castle prepares for one of its most beloved and mysterious traditions, the Spectre Théâtre. Not merely a performance, but a celebration of magical art, this annual event invites students and professors to participate in something ancient and deeply enchanting, a theatre made not of actors, but of shadows, memory, and illusion. The performances take place in the Salle des Brumes, a vast domed hall veiled in ever-shifting mist, carved into the mountain beneath the academy itself, accessible only by a winding staircase lined with flickering azure torches that burn without heat. The mastermind behind this event is Professor Cléandre Védrine, a reclusive master of illusion magic who has taught at Beauxbatons for over 40 years. With long silver hair bound by velvet ribbon and robes of night blue silk embroidered with starlight thread, Védrine is as much a part of the legend as the Spectre Théâtre itself. It is said he once served on the Conseil des Enchanteurs before retreating from the political world, claiming that magic should aspire to poetry, not power. He trains a select group of 6th and 7th year students to wield the refined and dangerous branch of conjuring that enables the performance, ombre-magie, or shadow magic. The shadows used in the Spectre Théâtre are not simply illusions cast by light, but living reflections conjured from memory and imagination. The spell at the heart of this creation, Umbrae Viventes, requires not only a strong wand and precision incantation, but an emotional anchor. Students must first meditate upon the essence of the figure they wish to summon, sketch their gestures in ink laced with powdered moonstone, and then breathe life into their silhouette through a focused act of magical projection. The result is astonishing. Shadows that move independently, speak without mouths, and evoke a presence that is both eerie and beautiful. One of the most celebrated performances in the history of the Spectre Théâtre was a rendition of the trial of Mélisande du Lac, an accused necromancer from the 14th century who, according to magical legend, turned her execution into a symphony of illusions. Directed by Séraphine Delacroix, a student known for her prodigious command of memory-based conjuration, the scene unfolded with harrowing realism. The shadows trembled as if in fear, the cold of the dungeons seeped into the audience's bones, and the scent of old parchment and candle wax lingered in the air. When Mélisande's shadow stepped forward and whispered her final defiant curse, the room fell into a silence so deep it seemed to swallow all sound. Spectators often describe the theatre not just as visual, but sensorial. The enchantments used in conjunction with the shadow magic draw upon layered charms, ventus illusio for wind, odora memoria for scent, echo tenebrae for distant sound. These spells, when woven together with precision, do not merely simulate reality but twist it, bending perception so that an audience member might feel the chill of a ghostly forest or the warmth of dragon breath. As Professor Védrine once wrote in a private letter to Dumbledore, "We do not recreate the world, we reveal what lies hidden beneath its skin." In 1991, just months before the Triwizard Tournament, a particularly daring performance depicted the fall of Morgane Lanois, a legendary dark witch who had once seduced entire councils with her illusions. The shadows in this production were so vivid that several younger students fainted during a scene involving her transformation into a flock of crows. One spectator reported seeing his own shadow weep during the climax. The Beauxbatons headmistress at the time, Olympe Maxime, called the performance an uncompromising portrait of power, beauty, and ruin. Participation in the Spectre Théâtre is considered one of the highest honors a Beauxbatons student can achieve. The selection process is rigorous, involving not only demonstration of magical proficiency, but an audition in which candidates must conjure a single shadow that expresses an emotion without words. A shadow that cannot speak must scream with silence, Professor Védrine is known to say. One year, a student named Louis Mercier conjured a shadow of a child chasing a balloon that would never land. No one in the judging panel spoke for over 10 minutes after it ended. Every performance is unique, and many are drawn from the personal dreams or nightmares of the students. There was once a piece titled Le Jardin Silencieux, or The Silent Garden, in which a young girl walked through a garden filled with statues that were clearly once people. The twist, revealed only in the final seconds, was that the girl herself was a statue reliving the memory of her last walk. The shadow of the girl faded as the scent of lavender filled the room, and the walls trembled with whispered laughter. It was said to be inspired by a tragic tale from the family of student Camille Verdon, whose great-grandmother had vanished under mysterious circumstances in 1897. Despite the magic involved, the Spectre Théâtre is not without risk. There are stories of shadows refusing to vanish after the performance, lingering in corners and whispering things in forgotten tongues. One year, a conjured figure of a lost knight from the Second Goblin Rebellion began walking through the dormitories at night, tapping on the stone walls with his spectral sword. It took 3 professors and a containment spell woven from phoenix feathers to dispel him. Professor Védrine maintains strict control over the boundary spells during performances to prevent such breaches, but he once remarked, "Magic that does not risk anything cannot reveal anything." The origins of the Spectre Théâtre stretch back centuries, perhaps even to the foundation of the Academy itself. There are parchments in the Beauxbatons archives detailing shadow performances held in the gardens during the reign of Queen Marguerite de Navarre, where nobles would gather to witness ghostly depictions of moral parables. It is believed that the magic was refined over time by wandering illusionists and poets, eventually institutionalized by the school's third headmaster, Alaric Duvant. His portrait, hanging in the théâtre's entrance, shows him with ink-stained fingers and a knowing smile. Students from Hogwarts who attend Beauxbatons on exchange programs have spoken of the théâtre in reverent tones. Lee Jordan once described it on the Wizarding Wireless Network as the most incredible thing I've ever seen, like watching dreams have arguments with your soul. Even Professor McGonagall is said to have once attended in her youth, and was deeply moved by a performance that recreated the first use of the Fidelius charm, where a shadow guardian vanished, leaving only footprints in snow. The technical challenges of each show demand teamwork and precision. Students rehearse for weeks, often late into the night, perfecting not only their magical control, but the story arc, the emotional pacing, the timing of sensory effects. Each performance is limited to 45 minutes by tradition, and there is an unspoken rule: no protagonist must ever remain whole. As Védrine explains, art without suffering is flattery, not magic. Audiences attend not to be entertained, but to be transformed. Each season, the final performance is open to the entire wizarding world. Aurors, historians, journalists, even retired ministers of magic have made their way to the Salle des Brumes. In 2003, during a particularly tense time for French magical politics, the Spectre Théâtre debuted a piece called Les Mains Vides, The Empty Hands, which told the tale of a nameless wizard who lost everything in pursuit of prophecy. The final scene, where the shadow knelt in an empty room while golden letters dissolved above him, moved several government officials to tears. That year, a bill increasing funding for magical arts was passed unanimously. Perhaps the greatest proof of the théâtre's impact lies in its invisibility outside of Beauxbatons. No recording devices work inside the salle des brumes. Quick quote here. Quills stutter and skip. Even enchanted cameras produce only misty blurs. As Professor Védrine has often insisted, memory is the only medium worthy of magic. Each performance lives on only in the recollections of those present. No two retellings are ever the same. The shadows, once seen, seem to imprint themselves not on film, but on the soul. Among the most whispered about performances was one shrouded in secrecy, shown only to staff and select seventh years in 2010. It was titled Les Trois Portes and is rumoured to have depicted 3 moments from a single wizard's life in reverse order: death, betrayal, childhood. What unsettled many was that the final scene featured a child who looked eerily like Tom Riddle, standing alone in a library with no books. The implications were never discussed, and Védrine refused all questions afterward. He simply said, "Sometimes the shadow knows more than the man." While other magical schools like Durmstrang focus on dueling and raw force, Beauxbatons treats magic as a language, fluid, symbolic, and subjective. The Spectre Théâtre is its purest form, uniting performance, history, and illusion in a single, overwhelming act. It allows young witches and wizards not just to practice spells, but to speak with them, to ask questions of the past, to challenge memory, to cast doubt on certainty. And in doing so, they often discover truths no textbook could reveal. It is not uncommon for students who participate in the théâtre to pursue careers in art, diplomacy, or magical anthropology. The head of the Department of Mysteries in France, Lauriane Marchand, once said, her first experience with magical empathy occurred during a Spectre Théâtre performance in her youth, where she felt herself become the grief of a man who had turned his brother into a wolf. These moments of merging with the shadow self are seen as rites of passage at Beauxbatons, a final test before stepping into the adult magical world. Even the castle itself seems to respond to the théâtre's presence. Doors open by themselves during rehearsals, candles burn longer, tapestries shift to show different images. Some say the very magic of Beauxbatons collects in the salle des brumes, gathering for that brief moment when illusion and memory blur into one. The shadows whisper, the wind carries secrets, and for those precious minutes, reality is held like a fragile breath between two spells. For all its beauty and mystery, the Spectre Théâtre remains a lesson, not just in magic, but in vulnerability. The conjured shadows are more than stories. They are reflections of the performers, fragments of their hopes, fears, regrets. To perform is to reveal a part of oneself that cannot be hidden behind robes or incantations. It is to say, this is who I am and who I might have been. And for that, each spring the hall fills again, not merely to watch, but to remember. Number 22, The Trial of the Moon Tower. Of all the magical institutions in Europe, few remain as veiled in enchantment and ritual as the Académie de Magie Beauxbatons. Known for its refined education, graceful spellcasting, and ancient ties to elemental magic, it has always stood apart from its British counterpart, Hogwarts. But one tradition at Beauxbatons eclipses even the most daring tales of tri-wizard champions, the Trial of the Moon Tower. Held every 3 years under the silver eye of a full moon, it is neither a tournament nor a ceremony. It is a test of the soul, a journey through shifting illusions and spectral memories that only the bravest and most balanced students may attempt. It is not listed in any official curriculum, nor announced in public records. And yet, generations of witches and wizards still bear the mark it bestows, a silver fingerprint on the palm, faint as mist, bright as moonlight. Beauxbatons does not divide its students by house. The school believes unity cultivates greatness, and so students live, study, and train as one. But on rare years when the lunar cycle aligns with the magical rhythms of the Pyrenees, headmistress Delphine Celeste receives a whisper, not in words, but in scent and sound. Rosewater on stone, wind chimes in still air. These omens foretell the return of the Moon Tower, an ethereal structure that does not stand atop the school's grounds but phases into existence from a deeper magical plane. It is said that the tower existed long before Beauxbatons was founded in 1292, and that its walls were built not by hand, but by ancient forces that predate human magic. Only 7 students are invited to ascend the tower when it appears. The criteria for selection are unknown, but patterns have emerged. The chosen are never the loudest, the most academically gifted, or the most popular. They are the ones who have suffered, endured, and learned. During the 2015 trial, for instance, one of the selected was a quiet 6th year named Aimée Fauchon, who had once failed her practical transfiguration examination 3 times. But she had also spent hours comforting first years during their homesickness and had offered to clean the library during a staff illness, unasked. Her invitation arrived in the form of a sealed scroll of pearl-white parchment tied with lunar thread that shimmered and shifted as though alive. The Moon Tower appears at midnight in the Cour de l'Écume, the school's lowest courtyard surrounded by enchanted willows. It rises slowly, stone by stone, as if being remembered into the world. At first, the archway glows faintly, then it breathes. Those nearby often speak of hearing their names whispered by no one. "A soul calls to you," said one line in A History of Magical Architecture by Héloïse Blanchet. The Moon Tower is not built to test spells, but to test spirit. It is more mirror than maze. The moment the chosen 7 step forward, the doors open without a sound. Inside, the tower contains 3 levels, each testing a different virtue: reason, compassion, and courage. No 2 students see the same rooms. For Aimée Fauchon, the first level was a library drenched in moonlight, but the books were blank, and every time she pulled one from the shelves rearranged themselves. Only when she stopped searching and listened did she hear a single whisper. Ask the right question. She sat for 30 minutes, silent, thinking. Then she whispered, "What do I not want to see?" A book opened in her hands, revealing a mirror made of ink. In it, she saw her own fear of failure. She wept. Then the floor melted beneath her, and she fell into the 2nd level. The 2nd level, compassion, is perhaps the most dangerous. Here, illusions take form, not to frighten, but to demand mercy. One student, Hugo Dervieux, described his 2nd level as a battlefield, not of war, but of broken promises. Ghostly figures wandered through the fog, some resembling teachers, others friends he had betrayed. One clung to his robe, begging to be remembered. When he tried to walk past, the ghost wept. Only when he stopped, embraced the illusion, and whispered an apology, did the fog clear. "It is easy to cast a Patronus," Headmistress Celeste once wrote, "but infinitely harder to forgive yourself. The Moon Tower teaches that no wand can heal what the heart denies." On the final level, courage, the tower tests the student not by fear, but by truth. One must confront a version of oneself that is unforgiving and cruel. The room is circular, built of polished silver that reflects not one's appearance, but one's worst traits. Aimée saw herself speaking scornfully to her younger sister, rejecting a friend's cry for help, rolling her eyes at her own mother's letters. These were memories, real and raw. "You may leave," her reflection told her, "but the silver mark only goes to those who stay." Aimée chose to stay. She spoke to each version of herself until the mirrors cracked, not with violence, but with understanding. The trial takes place over one night, but can feel like weeks inside. Time shifts unpredictably within the tower, and the spells used by the tower's magic are beyond classification. No known enchantment can replicate the depth of the tower's illusions. stated a report in Charms and Enchantments Quarterly. It is almost as if the tower reads the soul, not the mind. Students who fail the tower are not punished, nor are they marked. They awaken in their beds at dawn with fragments of memory and the bitter sweetness of having glimpsed something just out of reach. Those who succeed awaken with the mark. A silver fingerprint on their right palm, cool to the touch, sometimes glowing faintly under moonlight. The mark cannot be replicated or removed. It grants the bearer access to the Archives Lunaires, an invisible section of the Beauxbatons library that materializes only for those who carry the mark. Within the archives are books that speak rather than read, scrolls that change language based on the reader's soul, and one peculiar mirror that reflects who you will become, not who you are. Many do not speak of what they find in the archives, but every marked student reports a sense of peace afterward, a feeling that they are no longer seeking something unnamed. In the year 2000, a seventh year named Chantal Roux entered the archives after earning her mark. She would later become a healer specializing in magical trauma, known across Europe for treating victims of dark magic with methods no textbook ever taught. When asked about her techniques, she replied, "I didn't learn them, I remembered them." From the tower. Her mark shimmered faintly as she said it. There are records of over 300 students who have completed the trial since the tradition was reawakened in the 17th century. Many of them became figures of quiet significance: historians, healers, wand makers, peace negotiators. "It is as if the tower does not reward talent," wrote Lucien Vauquelin, a former Beauxbatons professor. "It awakens destiny. It does not choose those who shine. It chooses those who will illuminate others." And yet, despite its legacy, no student has ever entered the tower twice. Once marked, the door never opens again. The origins of the tower remain unknown. Some scholars believe it to be a relic of pre-wizard civilizations, perhaps connected to the Vela or ancient moon druid cults. Others claim the tower is sentient. During the 1893 trial, every student reported hearing a song, soft, wordless, and filled with longing. The notes matched no known melody. One student, Leonard Allard, claimed the song gave him the courage to confess a buried family secret that had poisoned his spirit for years. "The tower does not break you," he later wrote. "It rebuilds you with your own forgotten pieces." Despite the peril, students yearn to be chosen. They wait 3 years, watching the lunar calendar, performing small acts of kindness, not for reward but in hope. In the year 2021, a student named Elodie Marchand carried an injured owl she found in the woods back to the infirmary and stayed by its side for 3 nights. She never told anyone, but the tower knew. When the 7 invitations arrived, hers was among them. "The tower is not watching," Headmistress Celeste once said. "It is listening to the heartbeats we ignore." Failures are not shameful. Students who are not chosen often become the quiet backbone of the school's magic. They support those who ascend. They sing songs of blessing as the tower rises. They hold vigil outside the courtyard until dawn. There is no envy, only awe. For the tower does not favor. It reflects. The test is not against darkness, but indifference, not bravery in the face of dragons, but honesty in the presence of silence. In the forbidden section of the Archives Lunaires, there lies a scroll sealed with silver wax. Only those with the mark can open it. It is not written in ink, but in threads of moonlight. The scroll contains a single sentence that shifts as it is read, shaped by the reader's own truth. Aimé read it as, "You are not the spell you failed, but the heart you saved." Hugo saw the words, "Your guilt is not your shadow, but your path." Each reading is unique. Each truth is earned. Even after graduation, those who bear the mark find that its influence lingers. It glows during moments of great decision. It burns when a lie is spoken, and it vanishes only when the bearer dies. but some say the mark is found on the palms of certain portraits, glowing faintly in the moonlight of enchanted frames, and some say the tower calls even in death, awaiting one final ascent. Beauxbatons does not speak of the tower in official ceremonies. It is not part of orientation or exam prep, but those who know, know, and those who have seen its upper chamber never forget the final moment, a single window of pure moonstone overlooking the valley below, where no door leads, no broom can reach, and where the stars seem closer than the ground. That is the last test, to stand still in silence and see not where you are, but who you are becoming. Number 23, Alchemical Duets. Of all the magical institutions scattered across the European continent, few shimmer with the same ethereal grace as Beauxbatons Academy of Magic. Hidden deep within the Pyrenees, the French school has long been revered for its elegance, poise, and its unshakable devotion to the arts of enchantment and magical refinement. But buried beneath the veils of silk robes and perfumed corridors lies a discipline known to few outsiders, a practice so demanding, so intimate, and so perilously precise that even Hogwarts' own Professor Slughorn once called it a dance with disaster. This is the tradition of alchemical duets, a subject taught only at Beauxbatons, and one that continues to shape some of the most extraordinary magical partnerships the world has ever known. The core of an alchemical duet is not the ingredients, nor is it the incantation, though both are vital. It is the relationship between the two brewers. The discipline demands not only skill but resonance, emotional, mental, and magical. The potion brewed is a reflection of the pair's internal balance. If harmony exists, the potion stabilizes. If even a flicker of doubt or disconnection flares, the mixture may curdle, boil over, or erupt entirely. As famously recorded in Beauxbatons, A Legacy of Light, the headmistress Olympe Maxime once warned a class, "A misaligned heart will spoil the brew before the flame has licked the cauldron." One of the most compelling examples comes from the class of 1994. Among the promising students of that year were Thérèse Delacour and Marcel Dumas, an unlikely pair by all standards. Thérèse was methodical, quiet, and governed by logic, the top of her arithmancy class. Marcel, on the other hand, was passionate, tempestuous, and famously volatile. Their pairing in Professor Vernel's Alchemical Duets course was met with gasps of disbelief. But Vernel, known for her intuition as much as her taste in antique glassware, saw something beneath the surface. Their first assignment was a variation of the Amnis draught, a memory-enhancing elixir that required not only synchronized stirring, but a moment of synchronized thought. The recipe demanded both partners recall the same memory simultaneously while pouring in the powdered mandrake. If successful, the potion would shine silver. If not, it would turn to ash. Marcel, quick to improvise, reached for Thérèse's hand and whispered that they think of the first snowfall of the year, which had coated the Academy's grounds in a blue-white hush. Their fingers trembled slightly, but when the powder met the cauldron's heart, the draught shimmered like moonlight. The moment was not merely academic, it was transformative. As noted in Rare Practices of Modern Wizardry, the Delacour-Dumas pairing became the model of dynamic polarity, the term Professor Vernel coined to describe duets of contrasting energies working in tandem. Over the following months, their collaboration deepened. They brewed Therium, a potion once considered impossible to stabilize in under an hour. Their record, 26 minutes. They created a variation of Felix Felicis that enhanced intuition in pairs rather than individuals, a breakthrough that would later be used by the French aura court. Yet not all duets result in glory. The course is infamous for emotional fallout. In 2003, two top students, Jean-Paul Moutier and Clémence Virel, attempted the delicate selenic elixir, a calming draught used to soothe magical trauma. Though brilliant individually, they struggled to synchronize emotionally. A misaligned memory introduced tension into the potion. The brew spiraled, and a mild explosion left both with golden skin pigmentation for 3 weeks. The incident was recorded in Professor Vernel's notes as a classic case of incompatible resonance. More fascinating is the subtle way in which the discipline reveals truths about its practitioners. It's not uncommon for romantic relationships to collapse mid-course, or for rivals to discover a grudging respect. One year, a pure-blood aristocrat named Héloïse de Maupin was paired with Ariane Brousseau, a muggle born from the outskirts of Marseille. Tension simmered for days, until during the brewing of Tinctura Lucida, a clarity potion, they accidentally achieved the rare crystalline state. It occurs only when both brewers reach mutual understanding. From then on, Héloïse referred to Ariane as ma sœur d'alchimie. They remained friends for life and eventually co-founded the Brousseau-Maupin Magical Research Institute, now credited with over a dozen potion patents. The emotional investment required in alchemical duets is grueling. Students often report dreams bleeding into consciousness or empathic echoes during brewing. In her memoir, Cauldron and Soul, Professor Vernel wrote, "They come to my class seeking mastery, but they leave understanding their own hearts. Some resist it, others bloom." The practice has been praised by some psychologists in the magical world as a form of guided empathic development, particularly effective in teaching young witches and wizards how to trust not just others, but themselves. It is often said that a great duet can only happen once in a lifetime, and nowhere is this more hauntingly evident than in the tale of Lila Fournier and Henri Vaillant. The two began their duet partnership in 1982 and quickly rose to prominence within Beauxbatons. Their specialty was healing potions, and their work during the basilisk plague of northern Spain is still taught in Beauxbatons' advanced alchemy curriculum. But Henri was fatally injured during an experiment involving the volatile Amotentia reverse synthesis. Lila Inconsolable never took another duet partner. She went on to publish Brewing for One, a book now considered sacred among solitary potion makers, yet in its dedication she wrote, "To Henri, who taught me that the soul is an ingredient too." Curiously, the requirement for duet success seems to transcend traditional magical aptitude. Some of the most powerful duets in Beauxbatons history have involved students of only moderate individual skill. The determining factor, according to Vernel's findings, is alignment, emotional clarity, shared intention, mutual respect. In the words of the 1997 Alchemical Symposium, "The cauldron listens not to power, but to harmony." Beyond the classroom, the legacy of these duets has reshaped the wider magical world. Several of Europe's top apothecaries were founded by former alchemical duet partners. The Veil and Vine Apothecary in Bruges, the Lunevert Institute in Geneva, and the Panacea pair of the Loire Valley all trace their origins back to Beauxbatons duets. Their potions are rumoured to possess not just efficacy, but an ineffable balance that cannot be replicated by solo brewing. One controversial case involved a pair who eventually turned to the dark arts. In 1964, Antoine Serre and Béatrice Valmont were expelled for attempting to brew Sentienta Noctis, a potion designed to heighten one's connection to Inferi. Though the potion failed, the emotional link they developed made them potent allies in later years. Both joined the renegade group known as Les Yeux d'Ombre. The incident sparked debate over the dangers of too deep an emotional alignment without moral compass, and some even questioned whether Beauxbatons should continue the course. Yet headmistress Maxime defended it. Emotion does not corrupt, it reveals. Among the more heartwarming tales is that of twins Isolde and Lucien Perrault, who stunned the school in 2010 by creating the first potion to preserve emotions in glass orbs. The elixir of sentimental suspension, now used in magical counselling across France, was born not from dramatic contrast, but perfect sibling empathy. "It was like we were one," Lucien later said in La Potion Nouvelle, a publication for aspiring potion makers. "The flame didn't flicker once." Notably, the course is never mandatory. Students must opt in during their 5th year and receive approval from 2 professors, This ensures that only those with genuine intent participate. Even so, the dropout rate is high. Roughly 40% of students fail to complete the course, citing emotional strain, incompatibility, or burnout. Still, those who persevere often describe it as life-altering. "It wasn't just a class," wrote Beauxbatons alumna Mireille Godin. "It was the closest I've ever come to feeling magic as love." A curious aspect of the duets is their apparent resistance to replication. Several other magical schools have attempted to introduce similar programs with little success. Durmstrang discontinued its attempt after a disastrous fire caused by mismatched intent. Hogwarts once piloted a collaborative brewing module under Professor Snape, but he reportedly declared it a sentimental farce and cancelled it within weeks. Only Ilvermorny has maintained a similar program, though theirs focuses more on harmonized chants than on emotional synchronicity. Even within Beauxbatons, the course is held in a separate wing of the castle, the ethereal atelier. The room is designed with concentric cauldron stations, surrounded by floating crystal mirrors that reflect magical energy fields. Each pair's aura can be seen shifting in hue and intensity as they work. It's said that Vernelle herself once wept when a mirror reflected perfect rose-gold resonance, something seen only twice in the course's long history. Though most partnerships dissolve after graduation, some endure, both in life and in magic. The legendary partners Camille Rochefort and Séraphin Duclos, who met in the duet course in 1978, eventually married and founded the Potioneers Guild of Southern France. In their founding charter, they inscribed the words, "Brewing is communion. In unity, the potion sings." For many, the course remains Beauxbatons' most enigmatic offering. It requires vulnerability in a world that often rewards detachment. It asks young witches and wizards to set aside ego, fear, and pretense, and meet another soul halfway, through fire, essence, and steam. It is dangerous. It is beautiful. And perhaps that is why, year after year, despite the risks and heartbreaks, students line up for the chance to brew not just potions, but something profoundly, quietly human. Number 24, Mirror Mentors, in the quiet, sun-dappled corridors of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, where rose vines crept along marble walls and enchanted chandeliers floated like sleepy clouds, there stood a tradition older than any textbook or professor. On the morning of the first day of their 4th year, each student was called individually into the Hall of Reflections, an echoing chamber of glass and silence. It was here, amidst the solemn stillness, that they were presented with their mirror, an enchanted artifact known as the miroir conseiller. Carved of cherry wood and silver-gilt filigree, the oval mirror seemed at first glance little more than an exquisite decoration, but once held, it hummed softly with an old, intelligent magic that reached into the soul of its owner. It was said that the spellwork behind the mirrors originated in the time of Queen Mélusine herself, the legendary founder of Beauxbatons. She had studied the nature of reflection and consciousness, believing that mirrors could do more than just show faces. They could reflect progress, emotion, and inner truth. According to the library's oldest tome, Les Inventions de la Reine Mélusine, she crafted the first mirror using the tears of a Vila and the memory of a dying star. To see oneself clearly, Mélusine wrote, is the rarest magic of all. Each mirror was unique, responding only to its chosen student. When Céleste Delaroche received her miroir conseiller, it shimmered in her hands like dew on lavender. A gifted herbologist with a mind prone to wandering, Céleste struggled with focus. The mirror became her anchor. Whenever she forgot an assignment or skipped her scheduled dueling practice, the mirror would cloud over, its surface fogging like a disappointed sigh. If she lingered before it long enough, it would reveal scenes, not literal memories, but visual metaphors, a wilting plant when she avoided care of magical flora, a clock whose hands spun wildly when she procrastinated. Not all mirrors were gentle. Etienne Beaumont's was firm, nearly austere in its teachings. A fiercely ambitious student from Marseille, Etienne saw his mirror darken to pitch whenever he cut corners or used aggressive charm work for selfish gain. He once tried to manipulate the enchantment with a charm of deception, only to find his reflection vanish entirely for 3 days. During that time, he claimed to hear a low hum from the glass, like a reprimanding heart beating beneath it. When the reflection returned, it showed not his current face, but his younger self, eyes wide with shame. The mirrors did not merely reflect progress, they encouraged introspection. If a student struggled with envy, their mirror might display the face of the person they resented, smiling kindly. If one was plagued by doubt, the mirror might reveal their future self, confident and robed in success, but only for a moment, just enough to plant a seed of faith. Some students broke down crying before their mirrors, not from fear, but from recognition. The mirror did not judge, it reminded. One of the most curious cases was that of Mireille Fauchon, a half-blood from a humble village near the Pyrenees. Struggling with confidence in the face of her wealthy, pure-blooded peers, Mireille found that her mirror rarely reflected her at all. Instead, it showed her mother, a Muggle seamstress, tirelessly mending robes under candlelight. The message was subtle but powerful. The roots she came from were not a weakness, they were a source of strength. It wasn't until the end of her 5th year that the mirror finally displayed Mireille herself, standing tall in the robes of a future magical diplomat. In Professor Lavande Chénier's words, the mirror does not teach spells, it teaches the sorcery of self. In her advanced magical theory class, she often recounted how the mirrors had once been banned briefly during the reign of head mistress Calmette, who feared their influence made students too introspective and distracted. She removed them from the Hall of Reflections, Lavande explained, but within a year grades dropped, dueling became reckless, and dreams, literal dreams, were plagued with fog. The mirrors were reinstated the following spring. Though the mirrors had no mouths, they somehow communicated through images, emotions, and occasional whispers of thought. In his memoir, Charmes et Confessions, former student Lucien Marat described his mirror's subtle influence. It never spoke, but I knew when it approved, I knew when it worried, and I knew when I had disappointed it. His description of seeing his mirror depict him asleep in a field of broken wands after failing to study for his transmutation final became one of the most quoted passages among Beauxbatons alumni. A rare incident occurred during the year 1987 when a mirror refused to bond with its assigned student, Véronique Darly. Despite the enchantment's ancient precision, the glass remained inert, cold, and blank. Only after Véronique admitted to cheating on her entrance examination, something she hadn't even consciously remembered, did the mirror flicker to life, glowing a gentle gold. This prompted a review of the school's admittance practices and led to the introduction of a new screening charm known as Veritas Lucide. One of the few known enchanted objects to evolve with time, the mirrors appeared to grow with their users. Hélène Marchand, known for her rebellious streak and fascination with dark artifacts, once described how her mirror went from showing her snarling beasts in its early days to quiet forests and clear skies in her final year. "I wasn't the same person," she later wrote, "and the mirror knew it before I did." What made the mirrors especially haunting, however, was their quiet farewell. Upon graduation, they would cease to respond. Their surfaces would flatten into a permanent, gentle opacity, like moonlight through parchment. But they kept one final gift. Hidden in the silver of their memory was the student's best self, the moment when they were most alive with potential, magic, and purpose. Former students often kept the mirrors as keepsakes, not for vanity, but for remembrance, a kind of magical yearbook, but with soul. Aurélien Dubois, a renowned auror, once confessed, during an interview for Le Grimoire Quotidien, that in his darkest moments he would sit before his old mirror, long extinguished. Though it no longer spoke, he said he felt comforted by the shadow of his younger self within it. He believed, Aurélien said simply, he believed in everything. There were whispered rumors, of course, that the mirrors retained a fragment of consciousness even after deactivation, that they sometimes shimmered faintly when a former student achieved something great or stood at a crossroads. Though unproven, these stories persisted like fairy dust on parchment, beloved for their poetic impossibility. In the attic of the Academy, there existed a room few students ever saw, the Archive of Echoes. Here, retired mirrors were stored, carefully numbered and preserved. Professor Emeritus Pascal Vaillant, now nearly 120 years old, tended the mirrors like living portraits. Each is a testament, he once said, to a journey not perfect, not painless, but real. He claimed that on stormy nights the mirrors murmured, not words, but a soft chorus of memory, as if the building itself remembered those who once walked its halls. In 1994, Gabrielle Delacour, sister to Fleur, received her mirror early due to exceptional magical aptitude. It responded to her Vila nature with unusual clarity, often presenting serene oceans or quiet skies, images that soothed her tempestuous emotions. Fleur later noted that Gabrielle's mirror had taught her more patience than any lecture ever could. "It was like having an older sister," she wrote, "who knew every tear you wanted to hide." Of all the known mirror stories, perhaps the most tragic was that of Bastien Rivière, a promising magical artist who died young in a potions accident. After his death, his mirror was found, still glowing faintly, his image smiling softly. Headmistress Devienne ordered it sealed in the Archive of Echoes, where it remains untouched. Visitors claim it still glows on rainy afternoons. The enchantments used to create the mirrors remain a closely guarded secret, passed only to the headmaster or headmistress upon installment. Rumors persist that the key charm involves not only spells but an offering of memory, 1 hour of true recollection given freely by the caster. "You cannot create insight," Melusine once wrote. "You must give something of yourself, so the mirror may give something in return." The mirrors have never been replicated elsewhere. Hogwarts, Durmstrang, and other academies have studied them, but none have managed to duplicate their resonance. Some believe it is not just the spell, but the environment, the lavender air of the Pyrenees, the marble soaked with centuries of reflection, the legacy of Melusine herself, that binds the enchantment in place. Without Beauxbatons, the mirrors might simply be glass. Each year, as new students receive their miroir conseiller, the same hush fills the hall of reflections. The moment is sacred, more intimate than any sorting ceremony or wand selection. It is a beginning not just of academic growth, but personal discovery. In a world where spells can mend bones or manipulate time, it is this quiet magic, this honest reflection, that many students remember most. Even decades after leaving Beauxbatons, some alumni admit to dreaming of their mirrors. They dream of gentle light, of a voice without sound, of being seen not as they are, but as they could be. Perhaps in some secret way the mirrors still see them too. Number 25, the Cabinet of Forgotten Spells. In the farthest reaches of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, nestled within the stone corridors of the western wing, stands a door without a handle. Covered in ivy that never seems to grow or die, the doorway is so ordinary at first glance that many students walk past it without sparing it a second thought. Yet behind it lies one of the most mysterious and controversial secrets in the school's history, the Cabinet of Forgotten Spells. Not listed on any campus map and never mentioned in official records, this room is known only to a select group of students and a handful of aging professors who carry its legacy in hushed whispers. The cabinet is not a cabinet in the traditional sense, but a vaulted chamber lined with arched bookshelves carved from ancient wood, rumoured to have been taken from the forest where Morgana herself once studied. The air inside always smells faintly of candle smoke and decaying parchment, and the temperature never changes no matter the season. It is said that the chamber is protected by an enchantment known as Memoria Custos, a forgotten guardian spell designed to shield minds from knowledge too powerful to retain casually. Those who spend too long inside have been known to lose fragments of their own memories, offering an ironic defense to anyone too curious for their own good. Access to this room is forbidden to most, only students in their final year, and only those who have demonstrated extraordinary control over their magical abilities are invited to enter under the watchful eye of Magistra Corinne de Vaucelles. Known among students as the Iron Thorn, de Vaucelles is the school's senior enchantress and its last living link to the founders of the cabinet. With her raven black hair always tied in a tight braid and her voice as sharp as her wand flicks, she demands absolute discipline from any who set foot in the chamber. The origins of the cabinet stretch back to the 14th century, when Beauxbatons faced a magical crisis unlike anything in its history. A series of forbidden duels between students had led to chaos within the academy. According to the private memoirs of headmistress Elodie Blancheflamme, preserved only in the restricted archives, several spells used during these duels were untraceable, uncatalogued, and devastating. Blancheflamme's decision to collect and secure these dangerous incantations became the genesis of the cabinet. "There are spells," she wrote, "whose power rivals that of dragons and demons. To ignore them is to invite catastrophe. To know them is to tempt ruin." Among the hundreds of scrolls kept in the cabinet, one in particular stands out, Umbra Vocare, the Shadow Summons. A spell so old that its linguistic roots predate modern French, it is believed to have been first written in Gallic runes and only partially translated into Latin by 15th century monk sorcerer Père Lucien du Vaucluse. This spell allows the caster to reach into the liminal plane between the living world and the dimension of shadow. If performed correctly, it draws forth a servant of darkness that obeys the summoner's will, though only for a brief time. The spell's flaw, however, lies in its demand for emotional sacrifice. If the caster hesitates, mourns, or harbors regret, the shadow seizes on it and grows sentient. The most chilling story involving Umbra Vocare occurred in 1892, when a student named Antoine Merle, a prodigy with a reputation for arrogance, convinced himself he could master the spell and bind the summoned being permanently. What he did not realize was that his jealousy of a fellow student, Isabeau Tremin, would count as regret in the eyes of the shadow. During the incantation, the creature turned on him. According to the only witness, Professor Émile Rochefort, the room filled with a cold so biting the ink froze in the scrolls, and a shape formed that looked like a man without skin, made of smoke and mirror glass. Antoine was never found again. Rochefort, who had been dueling masters since the age of 17, resigned the next day and vanished into the Alps. To this day, Umbra Vocare remains in the cabinet, sealed in a glass box lined with wards. It is not allowed to be read aloud, and the scroll is wrapped in chiffon de silencieux, a fabric that nullifies vocal vibrations. And yet, it still draws students. It has an odd gravity to it, a pull. It whispers when no one speaks, said Magistra de Vaucelles in a rare moment of candor. Not a sound, but a feeling, like a name on the tip of your tongue. Dangerous magic never forgets itself. Not all spells within the cabinet are as overtly malevolent. Some were discarded due to impracticality or complexity. One such charm is Floralis Tempus, an enchantment meant to make flowers bloom in response to emotional stimuli. While beautiful in theory, it had unpredictable effects, triggering sudden blooms of poisonous hemlock when the caster experienced grief, or nettles when embarrassed. Students nicknamed it the Mood Garden, and its original creator, a 17th century herbalist named Clarisse Delamar, eventually abandoned her work after an unfortunate accident in the school greenhouse. Then there are spells that raise questions about time and memory. The animaspectum charm, for example, is designed to allow a wizard to see a fleeting glimpse of their own soul, like a reflection in water. While never dangerous in small doses, prolonged use caused dissociation in several students, most notably Jules Arnaud, who later became a poet famed for writing in two completely distinct styles, each attributed to a different part of his soul. The charm was classified as psychologically destabilizing and locked away. Perhaps most controversial among the cabinet's contents is a spell whose name is purposefully obscured in the official records. It is referred to only as the Veil script. The few who have seen it describe its letters as shifting on the page, refusing to be fixed in place. The script, allegedly, can open portals, not to distant lands but to forgotten memories, erased truths, and even alternate outcomes. It's believed the spell was invented by Séraphine Lenoir, one of Beauxbatons' earliest deans, who disappeared during a school renovation project in 1611. Her last journal entry ends abruptly with the phrase, "I must know what might have been." While Hogwarts has its own mysteries, the Room of Requirement, the Forbidden Forest, what sets the cabinet apart is its reverent silence. There are no mischief makers here, no Weasley twins to play tricks or marauders to etch names in the walls. The cabinet demands solemnity. Students enter it with wide eyes and leave with eyes that seem older, wearier. It is a place where one confronts the cost of knowledge, the burden of legacy, and the bitter taste of power almost within reach. Despite its restrictions, the cabinet has become an unofficial rite of passage. Rumours abound about what students see or feel inside. A recent graduate, Celeste Varnier, spoke to La Plume Sorcière, the Academy's underground journal, about her experience. "It's not just spells," she wrote. "It's like the room remembers everyone who's ever failed. When I touched the binding of one book, I felt sadness, not mine, but someone else's, as if the room itself grieves." There are also accounts of the cabinet influencing dreams. Several students have reported nightmares involving endless corridors of bookshelves, faceless figures pointing to blank pages, and voices asking them questions in ancient tongues. The faculty insists this is a psychological echo, but some claim it's the magic itself, reaching out beyond its boundaries. In one reported incident, a student in the East Tower woke screaming, reciting part of a forgotten summoning spell in perfect Aramaic, a language she had never studied. Interestingly, the cabinet's existence was almost revealed during a ministry inspection in 1963. Aurore Théodore Gallant, assigned to evaluate Beauxbatons' defense protocols, was directed away from the West Wing due to structural renovations. Later, he admitted sensing a peculiar pressure in the air, as if the walls were listening. Gallant, known for his sensitivity to magical resonance, would later comment, "Some rooms lie, others keep secrets. That one did both." There have been attempts to shut the cabinet down entirely. In 1987, under pressure from several wizarding families after a student collapsed in a trance during her final term, the school board debated sealing the room. Magistrat de Vaucelles reportedly threatened resignation. In a letter that was later leaked to the Revue Enchanted, she wrote, "To forget what we have once known is to weaken the spine of magic itself. Better to guard the flame than to pretend it never burned." This philosophy underscores the very heart of Beauxbatons' magical identity. Unlike other schools that bury the dangerous or inconvenient, Beauxbatons stores them like fragile relics, acknowledging their risks but never denying their existence. In doing so, it embraces a view of magic that is holistic, accepting its beauty and its menace as two halves of the same incantation. Some scholars argue that such transparency borders on recklessness, yet even they admit a grudging respect for the discipline enforced within the cabinet. The scrolls are marked with time-lock sigils, the books enchanted to sing lullabies if opened too quickly, and the very floor hums with layered charms meant to ground wandering thoughts. It is as much a library as it is a prison, and like any prison, it houses both the guilty and the misunderstood. The legacy of the cabinet extends beyond the academy. Several alumni who studied within its walls have gone on to become leading experts in obscure branches of magic. One, Gabriel Etienne, became a linguistic archivist for the International Confederation of Wizards, citing his exposure to the cabinet's forgotten dialects as his motivation. Another, Mireille Sauvage, developed new ethical standards for magical experimentation, haunted by a spell that caused her to hear voices for 3 days after a single incantation. And still the room waits, humming behind its handleless door, lit by candles that never burn down and guarded by silence older than France itself. It does not call out, it does not beckon. But for those who dare to enter, the cabinet of forgotten spells offers a glimpse into the bones of magic. The half-written pages, the whispered regrets, the echoes of knowledge too powerful to be trusted, yet too dangerous to forget. Number 26. Heirloom Wands. In the ivory-crowned halls of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, tucked away amid the Pyrenean mountains, tradition breathes with the same gravity as spellwork. Unlike the bustling, often chaotic process at Ollivander's wand shop, where a wand chooses the wizard amid flying boxes and clouds of wand dust, the practice in Beauxbatons bears the weight of legacy. Here, many students arrive not to be chosen by a wand, but already bearing one, an ancestral relic passed down like a sacred trust. These are not ordinary wands. They are heirlooms engraved with the history and will of past generations, and they hold within them more than unicorn hair or phoenix feather. They hold memory, they hold judgment. Mireille Delacour, a 6th-year student at Beauxbatons, and cousin to Fleur Delacour, carried with her a wand carved from aged sycamore wood, inlaid with a thin thread of silver that ran from tip to hilt like a vein of moonlight. It had belonged to her great-grandmother, Solange Delacour, a renowned seer who once advised the French ministry during the dark days of Grindelwald's rise. The wand had not been used in nearly 50 years. Mireille's parents had kept it sealed in a velvet-lined box, stored in a drawer that was always locked, its key hanging from her mother's neck. The day Mireille received it, the box snapped open with a sound like a heartbeat. It was the wand, they said, acknowledging her. Yet tradition demands more than possession. At Beauxbatons, the ceremony of éveil, the awakening, must be performed before a familial wand may be wielded. Held at dawn on the first day of the autumn term, éveil takes place in the l'Allée de Lune, a courtyard framed by marble statues of past headmistresses, under a glass dome that captures the first silver rays of morning. Students kneel on cold stone. They hold the wand in both hands. Professors chant in Old French. If the wand pulses with light, the bond is confirmed. But if it remains still lifeless or worse, cracks in protest, it is a public rejection. For some, this is a moment of triumph. For others, heartbreak. One such heartbreak occurred in 1982 when Léonard Vaillant, heir to the centuries-old Vaillant wand of hornbeam and chimera scale, watched in horror as the wood blackened in his hands. It did not break, but it burned, a silent statement from his ancestors. Rumors whispered that Leonard had been disloyal to his bloodline, associating too closely with Muggleborns against his family's wishes. Whether or not that was true, the wand judged him unworthy. He never recovered his place among the school's elite, and the wand was returned to his mother, who never forgave him. The essence of a familial wand lies not just in material or construction, but in memory. As Professor Blavel, Beauxbatons' wand lore mistress, once wrote, "A wand carried by 3 generations remembers each spell, each fear, each triumph. When you hold it, you hold them. The wand remembers joy and terror alike. If wielded in war, it hums with urgency. If used in healing, it pulses softly in comfort. These memories do not fade. Instead, they intertwine with the soul of the next bearer."